You're listening to the Straight Fire Podcast, hosted by me, Benjamin Anderson, my brother, Noah Anderson, and our good friend, Landon Averett. We hope you take this opportunity to support the podcast in whatever way possible, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the Straight Fire Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of the Straight Fire Podcast. Upon recording this will be the last episode of the year. Wow. What a year it has been. We went a lot of places. We did a lot of things. Recorded some episodes. We recorded
more episodes than we did last year, and I think that's
a win. We're now locked into the new studio. Episodes have been coming out pretty consistently, which means it's bound to fall off anytime soon. Unfortunately, I've taken on a very pessimistic outlook on recording podcasts.
I think at the beginning of the year, we set a goal for 45 podcasts.
What do we get, like 23?
I think we got half.
I don't even know if we got 20 out this year. I got to be honest. But there was a lot of things happening. New studio was happening. Didn't we go we went to GBN. We went on the mission trip and to GBN.
Philippines.
Wow, we did a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Because we went.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, listen, that Philippines trip, man.
Yeah,
I really thought I was going to vlog.
We thought we were going to be like, yeah, we're going to record everything. Guys, you don't understand. Coming off 30 hours in a plane with 1 hour of sleep and then 4 hours of sleep for the next 2 weeks.
I feel like, we talk about this because there's like space between times that we talk about the Philippines trip, but like the audience hears about it a good bit. Anyway.
Well,
I mean, it was my first time going overseas.
Too bad.
So, yeah. But yeah, just thank you guys for the support that you have given us this year. Y'all will not be listening to this episode in the year 2025. That's crazy. So the people listening are in 2026.
Wow. How's the future?
Man, I hope it's going good. I set this up to be my year. We will see if it is or not.
Year of Noah.
Yeah.
Starting
year of Benjamin. This is going to be the year of Benjamin. Anyway. Getting into the topic today, we're going to be talking about social media and how we as Christians are supposed to use it. I'm actually need to pull up the questions real quick. But before that, that's why I had this on. Before that, I wanted to get into some statistics, which I haven't done. I remember doing our very first episode, got into some statistics. Haven't done that since, I don't think. So I would like to get into that now. If someone else could pull up the questions for me real quick.
I've got them.
Okay, sick. So yeah, some statistics read the title for me. The one that I sent with the questions.
Oh, I didn't have the title.
I'm calling you out right now. What do you mean? They're you're not looking at the
social media a sin?
Is social media a sin? Right. Looking at our use of social media and how we can improve that. I guess as we start the new year. So yeah, some things that we should know before we start, or as we get started. Let's see. So the worldwide reach of social media is 5.24 billion people are active on social media, or about 60% of the global population, which is honestly maybe lower than I thought.
How much of what?
60% of the population?
Well, I mean, I'm sure the percentage that doesn't have it probably don't even have phones or service to begin with.
That's true. That's very true. Okay, so this is up year over year and still growing as the internet access expands and platforms evolve, right? What you guys were talking about. The average person globally spends 2 hours and 20 minutes per day on social media. Users are typically active on 6 to 7 different platforms.
Okay. New Year's resolution, that dies in 2026.
No, it won't. Users are typically active on 6 to 7 different platforms monthly, showing how people don't stick to just one. A 2025 survey found Gen Z spends 5.1 hours per day on social media, almost twice as much as millennials and 3 times more than older adults.
That's more than Landon sleeps every day. I mean,
that's very true. Wow. So again, social media is so prevalent now, and it will only be more so, right? Social media and AI will only grow more so as we continue growing, right? And as this technology evolves and adapts. I'm trying not to sound like an older person as I talk about social media. I know, scary. But like the average spends 5.1 hours on social media a day, not on their phones, because we've talked about phones in the past. That's an older podcast you can listen to, but on social media. That is an insane amount of time. So before we get into the first question, how much time do you guys spend on social media? 0. What about YouTube? YouTube counts as social media.
YouTube, maybe YouTube. Like, I'll watch it like lunch break during a work.
Okay.
And maybe
So 15, 20 minutes a day?
I'll be generous. We'll put it at an hour.
Okay.
We'll say
Wow.
an hour of social media a day.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty good.
Landon,
That's
no
pretty
social
good
media?
That's a pretty good guesstimate.
I don't have social media, but if we're counting YouTube, I do have.
YouTube, it does count.
Okay, then yeah, we're counting that. I'm more than I should recently due
Yeah.
to
Holidays.
holidays.
Yeah.
So I mean, like right now,
I've been there as well.
More than I should.
But yeah,
Typically,
I'll say during, like,
I'll probably get like
Your average.
typically I'll probably go like 45 minutes a day on YouTube or whatever, and then I had Instagram and deleted Instagram because it took up way too much of my time.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about that a little later, and just how much time we have to give for something like this. So to get into the first question, right? We talked about how much time average people spend on social media, how much time we spend on social media. And if you're listening to this podcast, I would highly encourage you pull out your phone and see what your averages are, just so you can have that in the back of your mind while we're Landon's pulling out his phone now. So you can have that in the back of your mind as we're talking about this. So looking at the first question, right? Why do we need to take a look about social media? What is this? What makes social media worth looking at for us as Christians? Is it because we need to change? Is it because that it's okay where it is and people overreact about it? What is it that we need to take a look at? Noah, I know you have some thoughts on this. So why don't you go and start with those?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm sure what some people are going to say is, well, the Bible doesn't specifically speak on social media, therefore we don't have a lot of authority to talk about it, because obviously we don't want to speak where the Bible doesn't speak, right, or bind anything that the Bible doesn't talk about. But, Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9 says, that which has been, that is what will be, that which is done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. So it's just this idea of really there's nothing new. Things are called by different names than they were back then, hundreds, even thousands of years ago. But the principles are the same.
Yeah.
Humans still have the same desires. Humans still have the same wants in life, right? The same goals, right? And so even though maybe the objectives look different, what things are called look different, right? The Bible shows that, hey, you're still the same human beings you were 500, 1,000 years ago, right? So these principles will always apply to us as human beings, right? You can't just dismiss anything because it wasn't specifically mentioned in the Bible. So, is it that big of a deal, right? And we're gonna dive into that in this podcast. But I would say it is that big of a deal because, like you said, people spend so much of their time on it, right? God has given us a certain amount of time to be stewards of. Time is everything. We spend our time making money, right? We spend our time with our family, investing in them. We spend our time with friends, investing to make them better, right? Time is the most valuable thing we have in the universe. Right, and how we spend it matters, right? If I asked you, Benjamin, I gave you $2 million, what are you doing with that money? Obviously, that's a pretty weighty responsibility, and I would argue time is what is worth even more than that, right? How much time is worth cannot be measured. So I would say how we spend something so valuable that comes directly from God is very important to us as Christians today.
Yeah, Landon, would you add to that?
I think an important part about this, going beyond the time, and that's very true. The Bible is very clear about you need to examine your life. You need to see what you're doing with your time and how you're spending your time. And I don't really want to get into that because I know we're going to talk about it later. But something very important that happens in social media is the influence that it has on you, and equally true, the influence that it has on other people. A lot of people find their value from social media. It's about the likes, it's about the comments and things of that nature. So when you think about the influence that social media has on you, but also true is how you influence other people, the friends, your followers, things of that nature. And so something you have to consider when you talk about social media is influence, because that is something that's in Scripture. Quite often, actually, Jesus talks about your influence, how you respond to situations, how you treat other people, how other people treat you. But there's always these verses, whether it be in the Old or New Testament, where the Bible writers spend quite a good amount of time talking about the influence that you have on other people and the influence that they have on you. And so it's very important in that sense to discuss that aspect of social media. How are you influencing other people? But more importantly, how are they influencing you?
Yeah, I think that's the key. And I have two things. I have two things real quick. And one is, what's on social media. Right? What can you find on there? For instance, if I told you were going to go to a place where you could, you would have access to, let's say pornography, you could have access to gambling, you could have access to violence, you could have access to all these things, right? Would you seek out to go to that place? No, probably not. Now you're saying, Benjamin, that's not a fair comparison of social media. There's other things on it than that. Yes, but that is on there. You understand or let's say, I forgot one thing, a lot of foul language, right? Let's say, if you knew that was an option, if you knew that that's an option, and for some of you, I have a feeling that, and I have this, for a lot of us, if we get on social media, the chances that we see language or something, something sexual that we have to, that we're going to scroll past, I'm not going to spend time watching that. But the chance that it's there, the idea that there's this option that's being presented to me constantly is not something that I'm thrilled about, coming up against every single time I sit down to open this device, if you will. And so that's one thing about social media, right? What's on it, what we're constantly seeing and what we're constantly trying to avoid. Another thing is just time, right? This whole idea came from a Kyle Butt lesson, and it was just titled, "When Does Scrolling Become a Sin?" Or no, I believe it is scrolling sinful. And, Kyle Butt made the point of, it's just like anything else. If you spend too much time doing it, it does become a sin. Landon, if you you can spend too much time reading the Bible, right? And you can neglect the other responsibilities that God has for you. If you're a father, right? Let's say you have a family. You spend all day, every day, reading the Bible. Well, you're not providing for your family. You're not counseling your kids. Even though you're doing a good thing, that thing has become a vice to you and you're not fulfilling your responsibilities as you should, right? Social media, every video in your feed could be puppy dogs, right? It could just be puppy dog videos.
I know someone who has that feed.
Yeah. Yeah. Every video could be puppy dog videos. Most of those are AI. I hate to break it to you guys now. But if you spend too much time watching those, you are failing to redeem the time, if you will. Ephesians 5:15-16. See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Verse 16, redeeming the time because the days are evil. A little later, I would like to talk about wisdom, right? And sitting down on social media, and wisdom is knowing how a course of action is going to turn out. If you sit down on social media and you know what you're going to see and that thing does not align with God's will, it is unwise to sit down and watch that thing. Is it sinful? Maybe not. Is it unwise? Absolutely. And so that's what I think is key about these two aspects of social media, right? What's on it and the time that we give it.
I heard a quote one time.
Landon had something real quick.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I heard a quote. I saw a quote one time. It was, "I will not set anything before my eyes that put Jesus on the cross." Right? And it's just this great concept of remembering what it is that we're viewing sometimes. And sometimes we shield ourselves or soften the blow a little bit. We think, well, I'm just watching it, I'm just observing it. It's not really going to affect me. But that's really not the concept that Scripture teaches. And I have more on that, but I want to let Landon say his thought for sure.
This kind of hit me building off of what Benjamin said. Something wise to do, and this is true for anything, is to consider whether what I am doing is bringing me closer to Christ or other people or leading me farther away.
Yeah.
And that's true for anything, but especially true for something that takes up this much time because you're only awake for most people 12 to 15 hours. If you're spending 6 of that, 5 of that, or even us where it's 1 to 2, that's still a significant portion of your day. If you're spending that much time doing something, you need to be very careful and you need to take heed and you need to consider whether or not what I'm doing is helping or hurting my relationship with God.
Yeah. And another thing the Bible talks about a lot is, I'm so sorry, Noah, go ahead. You had a point.
Nope, it's a longer point. So if you have something.
Well, another thing the Bible talks a lot about is being sober-minded, right? And that means to see things as they really are. So this idea of understanding what social media is, one, it's something that takes up a lot of your time because it's designed to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
There is no, I was thinking about this earlier, there is no social media platform that is made for you to spend less time on it. Every single one of them is designed to keep you wrapped in it for as long as possible because that's how they make money. That is their aim, that is their goal. So one, understand that, and two, understand they're going to do that by showing you everything they possibly can. They have no qualms, they have no morals, they have no reservations about showing you whatever it takes to keep you on for as long as possible. So being sober-minded about social media is understanding that if I sit down, this thing is going to try to keep my attention for as long as possible. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say something I have been thinking about a lot recently with the Temptation podcast a little bit ago, and just something I've studied in my own life is this idea of humans are vessels, right? I think sometimes we get rather full of ourselves, pun intended, and, we think, well, I'm so great, and I've done this, and I've done this, and this is the man or woman that I am, I'm my own person, or whatever, but really that's not the case. We are just the sum of choices, decisions, hopefully good decisions, right? And this stuff, and again, I'm not saying don't read too much into this, like, oh, you don't have free will or you're just a victim of circumstances.
We have a podcast on that too.
That's not what I'm saying. And go reference all form of material, right? But what I am saying, and the Bible teaches this too, is that you are a vessel of what you consume, right? And I've got a ton of verses. Thankfully, they're not the whole verse, just the little snippets, right? But 1 Corinthians 3:16 through 17, do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? God's temple is holy and you are that temple, right? 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you. 2 Timothy 2:20 through 21, some vessels for honorable use, some vessels for dishonorable. If anyone cleanses himself, he will be a vessel for honorable use. Luke 6:45, out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks. Matthew 12:34 through 35, the good person brings forth good out of the good treasures in his heart. Proverbs 4:23, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the springs of life. Luke 11:33 through 36, for the light of the body is your eye. If your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. Right, so all of this show, hey, what you consume, especially Luke 11:33 through 36, right? What you consume is going to affect your heart, and out of your heart is what affects what you do. Right. So this idea of, hey, even if what I'm consuming isn't bad, right, that's still not what your body needs, right? Your soul craves satisfaction, right? And God made a way for you to have that satisfaction if you will do what he says, right? Because ultimately nothing can fill that hole. All social media does is it distracts you from that ultimate satisfaction. So you will become what you fill yourself with. And then when we fill ourselves with this junk, I like to think about this idea of, I really like soda. Landon likes soda. Benjamin likes soda, right? We've tried to do challenges where we go the whole year without soda. Didn't make it because, hey, soda's good sometimes.
I could do that in 2026. So
if all you ever drink is soda, that is your nourishment. That is what you rely on. And then if all I do is drink soda and then I maybe have a real meal once a week, drink water maybe once a week, right? Then your body is going to decay and fall apart. Yet that's what we do with scripture, right? We watch social media for hours upon hours a day, and then we study once a week, right? We pray once a week, and we're surprised when our body and our soul is falling apart, and we're surprised when we're so separated from God and what he tells us to do.
But no, a Bible verse literally popped up in my feed. I mean, that is me taking in God's word. Anyway,
okay.
Landon, were you going to add anything to that?
So, no, and I was just...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have this crazy conception, right, that, well, if I do this once a week, right, do this once a month, right, get one good study session in, then somehow I'll be able to withstand temptation.
Yeah.
Right? Your soul is so empty and desperate that by the time real temptation comes, you have nothing to stand on.
Yeah.
So this idea of what you put before you, even if it's not necessarily something bad, it still affects you negatively, right? There is no standing still on the narrow path, right? You're either moving forward or you're moving back away from God.
I have a thought about that because there are things. So I think there are 3 tiers of actions right? As far as we as humanity can choose. We can choose, tier 3, you are now moving away from God. This action actively draws you further away from God. Drinking alcohol, doing drugs, gambling, that is moving you further away from God because God does not like those things. Lying, God doesn't like those things. God has said that those things. There is a middle tier of things that do not move you further away. I wouldn't say necessarily bring you closer. Right, Noah, you play Rocket League. You like playing Rocket League. We all.
Oh boy.
So like, is that right? When you play Rocket League, is that bringing you closer to God?
I mean, no.
Exactly.
I would say no.
But it's not bringing you. But is it bringing you farther away from God?
Not if I
Not if you manage it correctly.
Not if done in the correct way.
Yeah, in the correct way. No, it does not bring you further away from God. Noah, you studying your Bible, that is bringing you closer to God. Yes. Yeah. So again, I think there are three tiers of actions as far as, and I believe this comes from Kyle Butt's lesson again as well. Is scrolling a sin, which I would highly recommend you all go watch because it hand in hand with this podcast. But so again, I think there are three tiers of actions in regard to how far away or how close they bring us to God. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Again, everything should be done. And again, a lot of the time,
if everything is done in moderation, I think that is the key. A lot of the time what
we talk about in this is idolatry, right? We talk about, putting more time in this than you get to God. And I think that's very important, but we sometimes miss the bigger aspect of, even though it's not sinful, right? What you could be watching, if you're prioritizing it, then it is. Yeah. Right. And even, and maybe what you're viewing is sinful, right? That would fall into that third category that we talked about. You just have to be so mindful, right? I would say as Christians, most of our actions and activities, at least a majority of them, should fall in tier number 1, right? That is moving me closer to God. And thankfully, we have plenty of opportunities to do that here with a healthy church, right? But it's up to us a lot of the time to make sure that our lives always, I don't want to say balance out because that's not the correct term. It's not like I do some good, some bad, but it's up to us to make sure our lives are always moving closer to God.
Yeah. Well, think about this. If we are Christians, right? If we are Christ-like, what do you think Jesus spent the majority of his time doing? Do you think it was, kind of skating on by in that middle tier, right? Not really getting closer to God? Well, no, of course not, because Jesus knew what he should be doing. Landon, we're about to move to the second question. Do you have anything you want to add before we move on? All right. So question 2, how should we view and use social media? And then in parentheses, should we at all?
I mean, again, I'll watch it maybe for an hour or 30 minutes during, my lunch break or whatever. And I don't watch anything bad. I try not to watch anything bad. I typically, pick a video that I think is clean. And then if it's not, right,
you check it as reasonably as you are able.
Yeah. And then if it's not, I'll watch something else. But, I don't think it's wrong, and I don't think we can say you should never use social media, right? Because it's a tool. There can be some good off it, right? A lot of churches use Facebook to communicate, right? People use it to share church events and all that stuff. It just becomes a problem. It's very hard. Again, they're addictive. Yeah. So I think when you do use it, you should know exactly what you're getting into.
I think
and be aware of that.
Yeah, I think the key is this, like PSA, like flashing lights. Don't think social media can't become a sin. Yeah. Don't think to yourself, oh well, it's not talked about in the Bible. Everyone else does it. It can't be wrong. Don't think that to yourself because it absolutely can become a problem. Landon, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've pretty much covered the answer to this question, and that in and of itself, it's not sinful. Yeah. Right, but what you do with it, because it's no different than entertainment or money or any other type of technology. The way you use it is what defines whether it is in which tier you want to use that. I mean, you can use it in a way that is wrong, which would make it wrong. You could use it for things like you mentioned with Noah and Rocket League, me with other video games, and you can have it where it's a tier in which it's really not bringing you closer to God. And so I'm hesitant to say you should spend a lot of time in that area either. Yeah. You should try to avoid both of those as much as possible. But God understands, though, that there are times when you need to take a break. But most of your time should be spent in that top tier, which is also very possible with social media. It's very possible to be a positive influence on others, whether it be how you post, what you post, or what if it's YouTube, what you watch. But you can positively affect other people, and you can also help yourself. I mean, this podcast is on social media platforms.
It is,
so
yeah.
And so are many other great podcasts. There are great lessons. So you can use social media in a very good way. Social media can impact you in a very good way, but it's how you use it, how you let it influence you and use it to influence others. That's what matters.
I think the key is social media falls into this kind of the same idea as the internet, money, things like that it's a tool. It can be, even AI is now in this category. It's a tool that can be used to do great things, but it also can be used to do very, very harmful things. Jesus didn't say money was evil. He said the love of money was evil. I would say social media is this exact same thing. So I don't think social media is evil necessarily. The love of social media is absolutely evil. And hold on. I can't say absolutely evil because Jesus didn't say it was absolutely, but I would say the love of social media is absolutely something you have to avoid.
And he said, again, talking about money, it's very hard for a rich man to go to heaven, right? But I would warn people again that when you spend a bunch of time on social media, you're playing with fire.
Yeah.
Because it is a tool, and you can do good things with it. But let's be honest, when you're doing good things on social media, how long does it take you to share a post about something, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like a minute. I can spend about 15 minutes and get all the good I'm going to get out of social media.
That's very true.
I can check on my friends, send some messages, send a Bible post or whatever. And that, again, probably going to take about 15 minutes to do.
Yeah.
Right? So remember what you're dealing with. And this really is, and I don't want to dive into the physical, but it really is a drug, right? Meant to get you consuming more and more of it. And sadly, too many people use it to cope with things, right? And I think when you find yourself, look for those danger signs. When I find myself at the end of a long day, instead of taking care of things that God has told me to take care of, right? Instead of taking care of my family, making sure they have everything they need, instead of making sure my friends are okay, when I find myself on social media using that to cope and shy away from my problems, that's when you have crossed the line of sinful, right, into that stage 3.
I can think of times, and here's the thing about social media to me is when you use it, it's this idea of being vigilant, right? With everything that we do, or with most everything that we do, we need to be vigilant. And I'm teaching the youth group boys, so I'm teaching the 6th grade through the 12th grade. And let me tell you, that's quite the class. And this past Landon's in that class. This past week, we talked about vigilance, right? And what it means to be vigilant. And basically it combines these two ideas of being sober, seeing things as they are, and being wise, seeing how a course of action will turn out. You need both of those to be vigilant. So when you approach social media, you have to be sober, right? You have to understand what it is, and we talked about that, and you have to be wise. You understand how it's going to turn out. I would say 99% of you, not 90, I would say, 99% of you, when you sit down on your social media, know in some way the videos you're going to see. Not every video, but some of the videos you're going to see. If you think that if I sit down for social media and I'm on there long enough, this is going to happen, and you don't think that aligns with God's will, you are not being vigilant in your viewing of social media. I can think of times when I wasn't being vigilant in my social media viewing, and I can now think of and now I have these ideas of these videos that I wish I can go back and unwatch. I can't now because I wasn't being vigilant in my viewing of social media. And we probably all have stories like that, right? Because we're all using this thing. And so in your viewing of social media, for me, I'm trying not to do it because it's just another thing that I don't want to have to be. It's another thing that I don't want to have to concern myself over, right? And I think Noah and Landon, y'all think that same way. Y'all think the same way as well. So assess if social media means enough to you, and if you need it enough for that to be another thing that you have to be vigilant about.
What I'm about to say is kind of counter what a lot of us use it for.
Okay.
And it's something that I'd not really thought about in depth until Noah started talking. More often than not, when I get on YouTube, my purpose is to get on shorts and just watch them for no reason whatsoever. It's to not always cope, because it's not always that I have a problem. It's just that I want to waste time. It's 11 o'clock at night and there's really nothing else I have to do. So I'm just going to jump on YouTube. Something we don't talk about a lot, but we need to talk about as Christians is intentionality, which is what the reason that I do what I do has a purpose.
Yeah.
As a Christian, my entire life has purpose. From the moment that I obey the gospel and I go into that water and I come out, my job is to serve Christ and to bring people to him until I die. That is my job. And if you're not willing to accept that responsibility, then don't become a Christian, because that's what Jesus called you to do. The moment you become a Christian, your life becomes intentional. And we've talked about this before, but I want to go in depth in this again. Everything I do as a Christian should have purpose. I fell at that. I mean, I do. And this is probably one of the greatest examples that shows most Christians do. We have so much of this time that we just waste because I don't really want to do anything else with it. When in reality, the reason that I woke up this morning, the reason God gave me another day this morning was to serve him.
Yeah.
And I spent a considerable amount of that day wasting it with no good reason. I mean, and this is true, those 6 to 7 hours that people spend on social media, it isn't to see things that are good. It isn't to encourage people, because we're talking about ways that you can use it for good. Let's be honest, most of us don't get on social media to do those things. We get on there to waste time and to just kind of turn our brain off and just sit in this flow state of I have nothing else to do. Can I challenge that maybe we need to stop doing that? We wonder why the world has gotten so bad. Maybe it's because us as Christians have spent so much time being unintentional that when we look around, we're like, oh, wow, what happened? Well, maybe I need to get off my phone. I'm spending, and this is me, I'm talking to myself here. I looked at my time. I was on like 3 hours on YouTube today. Now, admittedly, I did nothing today.
Yeah.
But why didn't I do anything? I can say that I just didn't have anything planned. I mean, the fields are wide unto harvest. That's always going to be there. Be intentional.
I think one of the scariest verses in all the Bible is James, where he says, he who knows the right thing to do it and does not do it,
to him it is sin.
To him it is sin. Right? And I think social media absolutely falls in that category. And again, we're not going to sit here and say you can never be on social media.
No.
But I would challenge you, and this is what we've talked about and what we try to do in our own lives. There really is, and this is a personal thing with me. For me, there really is no, I can be on social media for about 15 minutes and then get off and go do something.
I'm not built like that.
Once it starts, it is very, very hard to stop. So if you are struggling to stop social media, right, you are struggling to, just get rid of it, right? Get some help.
Live without it for a time. And then, hey, for the next 48 hours, I'm not going to use social media. And if you're like, man, I need social media back, go back to it with boundaries, of course. Go back to it, But if you can go 48 hours and be like, man, like this didn't affect my life at all. If you can finally forget about it, then by all means, please leave it behind. Unless it's adding a lot of benefit to your life. And I'm not saying there aren't people who get a lot of benefit out of social media, right? But if you can leave it for a time, I would highly recommend.
And I think as it progresses, more bad gets added to it than good.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just again, the good. I think there are some things, money has a lot of good use, right? Money doesn't save people, but it can sure help when you're trying to get around the world.
Yeah.
Right. Social media, I think if you looked at the scale of social media, you have good on one side and bad on the other. I think the bad side greatly outweighs the good of social media.
I'm going to let you keep going. Everything that you can get good out of social media, or almost every bit of it, you can get somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Probably,
and you can get much more of it somewhere else,
Yeah.
right? Without all the dangers of, sure, Bijan talked about, you're going to this place with gateways that lead to almost any sin imaginable. You can find anything on social media, right? And it leads to all kind of sin, right? There are safer ways to do good for people. And let's be honest, who is out there spending hours on social media every day doing good for other people? If you are one of those people, that is great, and I love it. And keep going, keep doing that, keep doing that good, right? Because there are people who advertise on social media about Christ, right, to reach those people. But again, I think it could be done better, right? Instead of advertising on social media, maybe I'm just going to go talk to some people I know who don't have the gospel.
This would probably be a really bad time to plug the Straight for Our Podcast Instagram. I don't know why I was thinking about that, but I was like, we are on Instagram, aren't we?
Well, the problem isn't social media, but if you're going to be on it, that's what I said, be intentional. don't just waste all. And none of us are saying that it's a sin to get on there and doom scroll YouTube shorts for, 15, 30 minutes, but we're saying be intentional with what I'm doing with social media. There's people up in the northern states where there's not a lot of Christians around them to be able to fellowship with. And so social media gives them the opportunity to talk to other Christians. There are great things about that, but most of us can get that good without the need to have it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue and if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things." I think this idea of meditate, this focusing on, maybe meditating on. You're not meditating on things that make up the majority of your day, right? You're not now forgive me, the chance that you are going to spend more time, right, doing Bible study than you're going to spend on something else is probably low, because we just don't have that kind of time in our day. However, I think this idea of meditate means that the emphasis should be on what you're doing for God each day. That's not saying that every day the majority of your time is going to be spent, doing things for God, right? We have things that we need to get done if we're going to be honest, if we're going to live in this world, right? We have to work. We have to make sure that our families are taken care of. We have to do all these things. But the emphasis on my day needs to be what I can do for God. Maybe I'm going to have a conversation with a coworker, and that conversation is only going to take 5 minutes. But hey, that was 5 minutes that I spent helping my coworker get closer to God, right? The emphasis on my day needs to be about what I can do for God.
Never underestimate what a few minutes can do
Exactly.
to change someone's life, right? You can always, again, when you're being vigilant and looking for those opportunities. I saw, I heard about a kid who, his school bus driver had some kind of cardiac event or a seizure, basically passed out at the wheel. So the kid ran up, stopped the bus, and no one was injured. And the father was interviewed. He's like, well, how did your kid know to do that? And he's like, well, I don't give my kid a phone. So he just has to observe the world around him.
Wow.
Right. And because he observed the world around him, he was able to save all those kids' lives. Right. And I think that goes to show us, right, how when you're being vigilant and you're looking for opportunities, not just sitting back, right, not just observing, obviously, but when you're looking for opportunities to save someone's life, they will be provided.
That reminded me, because I'm talking to the teen boys about being vigilant, right? Being vigilant is not just this passive watching, right? No, I need to, I'll watch out for this. No, it's this constant, like, for instance, if you put a guard, right, on the gate, if you put a guard on the wall of a gate, right, and he's watching people come in, he's not passively watching, he's inspecting. He's, constantly making sure that there is no threat entering his kingdom, right? And it's the same thing. Sorry, no.
I was completely right now. I was just going to TSA is what we would call vigilance.
Yes, the TSA
against threats.
Yeah, exactly. It is that kind of watchfulness. It's not, have you seen that meme with speaking of social media, with the one guy or with the guy who's like patting people down, but he's just going like,
he's not even touching them.
He's not even touching them. Yeah, that is not being vigilant.
He's like tapping them on the shoulders and tapping them on the sides, and he's like, okay.
Yeah,
good.
Exactly. So like this idea of being vigilant is always checking everything. And with the Bible, it has to do with this idea of internally checking everything, right? You always need to be checking yourself and making sure that what you are doing is the best use of your time. Getting into the last question, what are we going to do with social media moving forward? All right, we've had the podcast. We've talked about the do's and don'ts. We've talked about how we need to constantly be evaluating our use of social media, how we need to be using our time for God. What's our mindset going into 2026 about social media?
Something practical that I do. So I remember one time I got back to the office where I work. I had been out at a job site, and I got back to the office, and I got back from getting lunch.
Okay.
I did not have my work keys with me, and my other coworkers had left the office, and so they locked it up because there was no one in the office. So my keys were in the office, and I could not get in the office. So I ate lunch on the back porch and listened to a lesson on my phone, right? And I remember going back into work, and I just felt so much more refreshed and relaxed than when I was in my office eating lunch, watching a video or something, right? And it was just this idea of I got to sit outside and enjoy how nice the weather was, right? I got to think about God's word just while I was eating, right? And that 30 minutes in my day made an actual tangible difference, right? And I would encourage everyone, it wasn't, is it bad for me to watch a 30-minute video during my lunch break? No, it's not. But could I be doing something better with my time? Absolutely, right? I can be a better Christian. I can be a better employee if I will only... And it's hard to let go of social media because we've been led to believe that is the only way we can make ourselves happy and feel better is when we have that release of just endlessly scrolling, right, and not having to think about anything. But our bodies weren't really designed to rest that way, right? God made us in a wonderful way where if you'll sit and just think for a minute and refresh your thoughts, right, you can tackle your day much more effectively. And I would encourage you, just take little moments in your day where you would do something with social media and just enjoy being on the earth, right, for another 15 minutes. You're not promised another 15 minutes, right? You're not promised another second. So just enjoy that time, right, where you get to sit and just observe everything. Observe and think about how I can be better for Christ.
Paul said in 1 Corinthians that whatever you do or whether you eat or drink, you're to do everything to the glory of God. And Noah talked about intentionality and you talked about vigilance. And those are the two main things that you've got to consider when discussing social media is you need to consider for yourself what it needs to look like for you. Mm-hmm. If it's a matter of I'm spending way too much time on this, set time limits because you can do that. And if you can't do it on your own, find someone to help you do that.
Yeah,
There's someone
you can have
you
can have a friend set your passcode.
I gave Landon my screen time password not that long ago.
He did do that. But you be intentional with what you're doing. Maybe it is that you're viewing things on social media, maybe not even on purpose, but that you shouldn't be. There are ways that you can avoid doing that. The easiest way is to just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. But whatever it looks like, but maybe you're that person that sits there and I was like, man, I only spend an hour a day on social media and I don't really look at anything bad, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. Instead of just sitting in this neutral zone of, well, it's not hurting me, but it's not really helping, let's start working on turning it into something that is helpful. That's not going to be always the easiest thing, and it kind of goes against why you would get on social media. But let's be honest, being a Christian was never supposed to be about me enjoying this physical life. It was about me bringing people to Christ so that I could enjoy my spiritual, eternal life in heaven. And so if that means that I have to give up some comforts here on earth, then maybe we should consider doing that because we've gotten way too comfortable as Christians. When you look in the first century, they were physically uncomfortable. We've gotten way too comfortable. Mm-hmm. So be vigilant and be intentional.
I can promise this. I have no idea what heaven is like. I don't know any, I know things that aren't going to be in heaven, right? But as to the specific details, I don't know. But I do know God has created humans with desires, right? And while we're here in this earth, all of those desires cannot be fulfilled, right? But these desires are to give us a taste of what it's going to feel like when heaven finally does come. And I do promise that if you spend your life serving God, you will be able to be so much more fulfilled than you just wasting your life away by scrolling, right? And heaven will mean so much more when you've worked for it, right? To achieve heaven, you have to be actively walking, not just sitting, right? Satan owns the fence. Satan owns, if you're just standing, just looking around, trying to figure out what to do with your Christian life, you know what progress looks like. Start walking. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be what your flesh wants you to do, but you're warring against those desires, right? Push on. Right? Every day, get a little bit better. Every day, pick yourself up and do better.
I think the thing is, the key is Christians are called to not sin, but that's not all we're called to do, right? We're called to do more than just, oh yeah, well, I didn't sin today. So we're called to act. We're called to, to do the right thing, right? Not just avoid the wrong things. I think that's the key. And, I guess just as we bring this podcast to a close, just be vigilant about everything that you're doing. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just have one more thing. What I found was when I was studying temptation and all that, when we talked about you are a vessel, you know what the best way to keep the darkness from coming towards you? Fill yourself with light, right? Fill yourself, Jesus gave that parable about the 7 demons who went out of him, or the demon who went out, came in the man, messed him up. Then the demon left. And then he comes back and he finds the house well kept, right? And everything put back in order. And then he brings 7 worse demons, right? Maybe you do decide to get rid of social media. But if you fill it with something else, then it doesn't really matter, right? But when you are filled with light, it is so much harder for sin to get you, because you've been fulfilled in the way that humans were intended to be filled, right? Social media won't do anything. You won't have any resistance against the darkness. But if you can fill yourself with light, and you know what that looks like in your own life, then you will have such an easier time resisting temptation and getting to heaven.
Yeah, I would agree. And we want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Straight Fire Podcast. We are on social media. Believe it or not, follow us there at the Straight Fire Podcast, and send in your questions to thestraightfirepodcast@gmail.com.
Good use of social media right there.
Well, emails and social media.
Oh, I thought you were talking about, okay, well, you can leave comments and stuff. We look at those
it's still
too.
on social media.
Comments?
On YouTube.
On YouTube?
On YouTube, yes. I thought you were talking about email.
You can leave a comment on an Instagram post. We might see that too.
We don't post on Instagram, but we
I
are
thought
there.
we did.
But we are there. We do every now and then. If there's a huge update, it will be on Instagram. So that's why you should follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, only big
Well,
stuff
I don't know if
goes to
Instagram. Anyway, this is that's another topic for another time.
Oh boy.
But yeah, we want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Straight Fire Podcast. Get in touch with us any way that you can. More than likely, we will see it, and we would love to. We'd love to respond to you. And yeah, thank you guys for all the support you showed us in 2025. We're looking forward to another big year in 2026, and we hope to see you guys in the next episode.